Ciao, welcome to our channel, and now we are back and with the recap of day 1 of the Indian tournament that is held in Chennai. Very interesting tournament. I think it's 3rd edition of this tournament. There is kind of open section, plus there is a tournament with top level players. Most of them are Indian stars, but also there are some players such as Anish Giri that we know represents Netherlands, Vincent Keimer, and more of them. For example, also Dutch player playing there, the Van Foreest. So we'll see just 2.5 games, let's say, because on Erigaisi game I'll not focus that much. There were other 2 games that ended up in a draw, very boring games, to be honest, nothing interesting to say about it. But other games are really very exciting, so we'll try to analyze it right now. For example, this one between Vincent Keimer and Nihal Sarin. So Vincent starts with d4, and we see Grunfeld system with c5. Before we know, very often black captures here, sometimes there is a knight e4 move, but Nihal decides to play move c5. So creating tension in the center, dc and bishop e6. This line is one of the main lines in this variation with c5, but it's not that popular in general. So knight d4, knight c6, takes, and we arrive to this position after the trades. So usually here g3 is known as main line, allowing bishop b2, allowing the check, but then after this taking on b7, rook f8. Very interesting detail. We'll see that later that Nihal will make a mistake playing this move. Because in general, as we see, this is typical idea for such position. King stays in the center and rook comes here. Why, it's not easy to say, trust me, but that's engine nowadays, probably because of some pawn push or something like that, or that something here will be hanging with check at some point. But queen d2 was played, and now rook f8, as you see, mistake, and the computer is giving around +1 already to Vincent after this point. So if we see, it's quite complicated how it works. Here rook f8 is already bad move, but here it's a concrete reason. Apparently rook f8 bad is because of move e3 that was not played in the game. So idea of black here is to go bishop d4 and capture here the pawn. Alright, so by playing d4 here, we stop move e3, that after rook f8 move e3 was stopping bishop d4. Yeah, d4 with the pawn can be, but then idea of engines is just take like this. Now pawn on b2 is protected, rook comes to the center, and white has bishop pair in very open position, extra pawn, so what more you can dream about. Still black can capture here, we should say, but after this the b7 pawn will fall at some point. So still wasn't played, e3 by Vincent, and Nihal makes his idea. He plays here, he captures here, a3, probably to kick away the bishop at some point. Obviously main idea is to stop bishop before pin. d4, as we know, when we have, it's not isolated pawn, but it's a weak pawn anyway, because this pawn is barely moving, so we try to trade it. That is absolutely logical thing. b4, bishop b6, bishop h6, then pawn takes happens, and according to engine, so we see that black sacrifice the exchange, right? And that is thematical sacrifice. Nothing surprising, and we reach this position. Again, according to engine, better to keep the queens on the board. The same idea, the same sacrifice, but with queens on the board, it's more chances, not easy to develop this bishop, because g2 pawn is hanging, for example, rook comes to d8 already very fast, and the chances are better, supposedly. But the following ending was quite complicated, we'll see it now. So rook c1, unique move to get advantage, but it's obvious because we want to get the pawn for free, otherwise let's say c5 and pawn will be traded. There's no way to keep this pawn. Let's say if black were to defend it, white can just double up the rooks, you know, put more pressure and take it. So king goes here, we push, and here start some series of very weird moves. For example, here b5, one of the most natural moves, I would say, wasn't played. That was rook c4, anyway e5. Idea was maybe to provoke it, so it was intentionally, but I'm not sure why. Because yeah, it's true that maybe rook can come from behind, but let's say rook c7 now can be played also. Probably idea that here is king f6, and in the game if I play king f6 there is pawn falling, but As we'll see, king h6 here is bad because of concrete push straight away, but it's not easy to understand. The best move still was here, giving up the pawn and playing like for counterplay here, if ever. Okay, king h6 was played, h4. Here once again b5 was a move, like, you know, we have 2 versus 1 and we should push this. Actually h4 was a terrible mistake, because it creates a weakness first of all, but also gives black a very interesting idea. Try to find it right now. The idea that was missed by both players was to play rook f8, kinda ignoring all this pawn push, bringing it to f4, but not really to capture the pawn, but to play first rook e4 check. And suddenly, if king goes to f1, this is a draw, because we threaten this move winning the game. King has to go away, and we just repeat. If king goes here, we continue repeating. If king d3, rook e1 obviously wins the game for black, and if king d2 that I was thinking, then it's okay, game goes on, but king g5, and basically this push never works because of bishop b6 idea, we cannot take it. And while black will start to activate, let's say rook takes, king g4, king g3, and it's very dangerous for white, almost losing on practical point. No one saw this idea. King h5, very natural move once again, bringing the king. Rook takes, king g4, rook g7 from behind, here it's pretty logical, rook b6. Again, here was played move b5, very logical was to take, probably he saw that just will be producing some trait of this kind, and he didn't like it, even though it should be completely winning, like you get rid of the main problem and position. I don't know really what was, maybe he thought rook f6 will be a matter here, but okay, we have rook d7, rook f4, this idea maybe now was seen, but now it's not that strong, because you can simply play king f1, there is no rook h4, and after king g3, let's say we can even transfer it to this position, because we can, okay, in this case we have check and we pick up the pawn, but if it e takes, we simply promote earlier. Let's say after this, again, we always have this check, picking up f2 pawn. But it's not easy to see in time scramble, obviously. Even though white had here 20 minutes, surprisingly. But okay, b5 played by Kemir. Again, idea of rook f6, no one's seen it, so rook d6 is played, and game soon will finish a dramatical way. Okay, b6 and so on, and here rook d6 is apparently a mistake. Here players both needed to understand that g3 is strong for black, and that g3 is strong for white. Like g3 was idea to stop black pawn from coming here. In the game was played rook d6, and black had a chance to equalize with g3, and that they didn't see it. What was the problem? Why it was not played? Probably because of rook g6, so pawn is hanging, and now king h5, we take rook b6, and the rook h3 would be made, but rook is hanging. It's very important. We'll see it right now. So what happens in the game? We go here, and now king h5 has to be played, kinda. g3 here already loses the game. The difference that we simply take, and now b6 pawn is untouchable because king is not on h5 attacking the rook, so now rook h3 is the mate. That was the reason why it was needed to play g3. And now after king h5 already it gets so complicated still for both sides. Okay, I mean it's all mistakes repeating, they both don't see g3 chance, and then finally win centralize, the g3 wins, and actually it's completely winning already. We stop all the counterplay, and here beautiful idea will be blundered as well. Okay, here still there was some moment. For example, now what is the most obvious move to play with black? I mean, for me it's like very natural to go king e4 to support our other pass pawns that we have, like that. And okay, this move is not possible. I don't see a way for white to progress, to be honest. Probably go rook g6 for the pawn, but let's say king takes, rook g4, and maybe something like that. Maybe we can go king e3. The difference that here we can simply grab. I don't know. But in the game was played to rook h7. Logic is interesting. Obviously, let's say something like b7, rook h2, check, exclamation point. We promote the queen and we win the game. But he missed the move, only move that wins the game here for white. Try to find it again. Yeah, the move was rook c7. Incredibly strong move. So now after check, unfortunately the poor king is in the wrong square because of the skewer here. and he tried to avoid it, but actually after b7 nothing changed. Rook h2 doesn't work for same reason, and now rook c8, and again rook h2 doesn't work because of check on f8. So this idea simply won the game for Vincent. As we see, very exciting game. Now I'll show you the Arjun game, because save the best for last. Game between Vidit and Van Foreest was absolutely impressive. But let's go with this one here. Just wanted to show basically some opening novelty by Arjun. So they play typical Italian game, and here at some point he sacrificed pawn. He goes bishop b5, allows to take here, and they reach this position with one extra pawn for Liang here. But the plan that we have bishop pairs, this bishop can be strong in both diagonals, this pawn is very weak, these pawns are very weak, and white, it's hard to play with black. For example, here, black, didn't find move d5 here. We'll see what's the difference, right? He played it here and it's not that strong. First of all, why d5, right? We understand that to keep the pawn will be extremely hard in general. White will bring rooks to the center, like maybe after trading bishops, this knight will jump either to f5 or to b5, and black will be in big trouble. So in this case, why d5 was supposed to be played here, because if we hold d5, we have knight g6, very important intermediate move, and now we take on d5. The difference is that after how it happened in the game, now after capture we don't have intermediate knight g6, we can take looks like back, but now knight can be captured, bishop can be captured, still it probably could be played, but also e5 is strong move here. Again, the move that I think e5 is the main problem actually, because before there was a knight blocking this pawn from moving, so that's how it works. E5, knight e4, and okay, but from here actually the game was quite easy because of one strong move that was found. Here, to be honest, it was no need. I would play probably something safer than what Arjun did, but he plays very concrete move g4, forcing a black take, and now queen is kind of trapped. So black has to sacrifice bishop, and I didn't understand why it was sacrificed this way, because now you get one pawn. Not even, you don't even have probably time to take on g4, but you can, but you get one pawn for peace after this trade. Here you get just two, right? It's just mathematics. Maybe it was rook g1 is the problem, thinking that it's folding, but it's protected by rook. There's queen h4 check. I don't know really what happened. I bet that just bishop g4, queen g4, it's around equal. Like maybe knight c7 once again, but still. This we can go away, take, and then maybe this what was missed. Yeah, maybe knight c7 and the bishop falls, but also it's quite easy to see. I don't know what happened there. So they went for this line, and after it, there was the game still continued for a while, but actually it didn't make much sense because it's absolutely clean free piece for white, and except of these details, absolutely nothing to see. A good win by Arjun, good preparation, good play, and the win. And now the best game by far, maybe even that I was seeing of this year, because I didn't see that many games because of work and so on, but this game impressed me so much, to be honest. Vidit White pieces versus Jordan Van Foreest. As you see, we are following the Zemish variation of King's Indian here, with the novelty by Van Foreest by playing a6 b5. It's not that novelty, it was already played, but it's far from being a main line. And here already, according to engines, cb, because we did saying, I see pawn, I take pawn, accepted challenge, right? But probably the best move was just playing something like on the king side and let black capture, because you obviously will always recapture this pawn back. It's not a big deal, but okay. He snatched the pawn, c6. Here Van Foreest playing with strong precision, that's true. d5, that reminds me of these Philidor variations where, black breaks the center like that, 4 pawns in the center, bishop e2, h5. Also typical idea, when someone's knight is on g3, we want to kick him out, right? h5. And let's say if white includes h4, it's usually worse because knight is still not stable, still not moving, and this knight after, let's say, obviously white will take with the knight, but let's say if ever this, black can win eventually the square, that can be useful. But Pawn takes, so now white simplifies, and it's true, knight on h1. I remember a friend of mine from my city, yeah, it was having this knight on h1. It was looking very ugly, but who didn't have it? You know, everyone had it at some point of our life. So rook e8, bishop b5, and pawn takes, and now bishop g5. And you might wonder why. This was probably blundered by Vidit. Why not taking the pawn for free? Right, looks like very obvious move. Try to find, here's beautiful tactics for Van Foreest. There is queen a5 move. Brilliant move, but actually easy. It's fork. You queen takes, bishop d4, intermediate check, and black simply wins a piece. And there's no other way to save it. It's double attack, right? And if we try to defend both bishops, we capture first one and then another one. So queen a5 just simply wins the game on the spot. That's why bishop went to g5. According to computer, was better to go to f4. Oh, to h6 as I remember. But okay, to be honest, it's not that big difference. Queen b6, a4, bishop a6. Like this game by Van Foreest, I saw interview of Daniil Dubov about his preparation of match versus Magnus Carlsen. He says that Van Foreest both have very creative play. Bishop a6 was so strong. Actually, it was like we did seen it from far away, because as we see, we did on next move spend like 25 seconds. Okay, you probably do not see it, but 25 seconds. And he captured here, rook e2, entering here h3, d3, and suddenly it's free piece for white, but all pieces are pinned. Bishop comes to d4, pass pawn on d3, complete massacre happens, and here rook b2 was a mistake, but it's hard to see what's supposed to be done. Apparently bishop d4 was a move. I mean, that is obviously that it was considered by Jordan. Bishop h4, almost unique continuation to keep the knight alive, and now this strong maneuver queen d6, queen f4 that was probably missed. Like if bishop g4, f5, you know, white needs to keep the extra piece because position is terrible, and still if you will give up your extra piece, then what are you playing for? So bishop b5 is absolutely forced, and surprisingly after taking on a1, queen f4 just wins the game. Bishop g3, queen f3. White has still extra piece, but it's completely pinned. No piece can move somewhere. d2, rook e1, this idea is happening. There are more pawns. Yeah, white is barely moving. I mean, there is d2 line, the bishop b2, you know, rook e1. All this is falling apart. Also sad that he didn't find it. Not that I wanted Vidit to lose. You know, Vidit is one of favorite players in this channel, but I mean, Van Foreest deserves this. He played so beautiful game, but he mistakes, and suddenly after rook b1, bishop d4, it's free piece. I mean, it's literally free piece. There is nothing to do already with black. You see white survived, and it's completely free piece, no even pawn for this piece. But we didn't win the game. He played bishop b5. This is extremely hard. It's one of the most natural moves in the position, but it has some problems. One is that it allows rook a1, and this kind of line where according to Edgen it's equality, but you know, it would be definitely hard to play on the practical terms this position with white pieces, I believe, or with black, excuse me. So, but also rook e8, very natural move that was played in the game, we'll see now, was strong. Supposedly bishop c6 was stronger, attacking the pawn. Idea, if the pawn is pushed, we just simply will give up our piece back and take the rook. It's easy to see. But rook d8 is absolutely normal, and now queen c2, and idea rook d1 or b1, so we keep these bishops on the board, not letting black the open file, because you will see what's the problem, right? After bishop b5, black has both a file and e file, e8 and a8 squares, but playing bishop c6 we remove these both squares for the black rook. That's the idea, but okay. And here bishop g5 was mistake, allowing moves that I don't know how it wasn't played again. Here, the best move for white and only move was knight to g4. But it's good tactics. You need to be good tactically, so you defend bishops this way. You need to understand that allowing bishop rook coming to e1 is dead threat. Maybe idea was bishop takes d2, but then rook d1. I don't know what was, to be honest, in the mind, because here it's queen c2 probably. Let's say like this, and you know, we're threatening too many things. So knight g4, but looks like it's losing to f5, but actually now bishop d2 works. We can literally go here, and now if bishop d2 we have a fork. Black cannot take here. Yes, it can take the knight, but then after bishop c3, queen c3, queen d5, then h takes, we just have too many extra pawns as white and winning position. Again, white's not forced to go here, king g7, and game continues. That's why it was very hard to find knight g4. But how rook e1 was not played, I don't have any words here. Probably you deserve to not win the game if you don't play such move. Instead was played f6, and you know, we always say maybe those ideas to play like intermediate and now play rook e1. I don't know, because bishop also is kind of trapped, right? So, but basically he forced Vidit to play a winning move. I mean, winning, drawish move, because where more? What else, right? I mean, here bishop captured, here bishop captured, here bishop captured, here as well. h6, it will be or trapped or it will be pursued, so sooner or later it will be played, bishop d2. So I don't understand why not rook e1. Moreover, rook e1 stops idea of sacrificing bishop back, right? Because it's attacking the queen. And also f6 weakening the king, weakening g6 pawn, and Vidit, a strong tactical player, he see it immediately. He has queen b1 exclamation point, and now we see the point behind it. Queen g6 is just threatened. So we forced to this position, but here, I mean, it's 2 pawns for white, but already absolutely ruined king, so also to win it will be too complicated. And after this game end up in a draw very easily. But very interesting game, full of fireworks. That's why I like the tournaments where not completely tier 1 players play. I know, let's say Vidit, what is tier 1 player for me? It's like Fabiano Caruana, Gukesh, people who really like, or were fighting for the world championship title, or were completely close, like Hikaru, let's say. Vidit, in all candidates that he qualified so far, was one of the last players in the rankings, right? Jordan, I don't know if he even played this ever, maybe once, but I'm not even sure if he ever played the candidate, so it's not completely tier 1, like S category. And so for this, to watch these games is very interesting because they try to surprise more, they have more novelties, they're more aggressive, and in general, there are more mistakes that actually some people don't like it, but also games are not that boring, ending in a draw every time. So that's it for today. Hope you like the recap. I'm not sure if we'll be covering this tournament, depends on your feedback as well, so try to subscribe, smash like button if you like the video, and we'll see you in next videos. Ciao!